By the time you're listening to this episode, we're about a month away from the federal student loan payment pause ending. With the federal student loan debt forgiveness program in the throes of legal and political battles, millions of borrowers will be forced to begin payments. I've been working with my clients to help prepare their budgets for the added expense, but not many have that luxury. Today, I'm talking with Nika of Debt Free Gonna Be about all things student loan payments. Nika has been a fantastic resource for student loan news and updates, and she's here to help shed some light on what's coming for student loans. Welcome to the City Girl Savings Podcast. I'm Rhea Reeves, founder and finance coach of City Girl Savings. I turned my life around with budgeting many years ago, and now I'm on a mission to help others do the same. I fully believe that you can enjoy your life on a budget, and this weekly show will focus on the intersection of money and the city girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. Nika started her blog, Debt Free Gonna Be, in 2018 as a way to share her journey of paying off over $200,000 in debt. Her hope was that sharing her journey would help inspire others on their own journeys, and boy, was she onto something. Nika's from Maryland, and when she's not working, she can be found enjoying new restaurants and food experiences. We definitely have that in common, reading or volunteering. Nika and I actually met on Instagram years ago, and I've leveraged her as a resource for the latest student loan news and updates. Hi, Nika. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. Can we start by you just sharing a little bit about yourself and how Debt Free Gonna Be came to be?
Yes, that's a story. So again, I'm Nika. I am a new debt-free award-winning personal finance expert, debt expert, and personal finance content creator. And I am the founder of Debt Free Gonna Be. What's interesting about Debt Free Gonna Be is that Debt Free Gonna Be actually started just as an Instagram page. There was no blog. There wasn't this community of thousands of people. It was an Instagram page to document my journey to tackling my six-figure debt. Now, I had, you had already shared you had been on a debt-free journey twice, right? Yeah. Before I really got started, I had started a debt payoff journey off and on, like not really being serious, not being 100% committed to it. And so I knew this time around, if I was going to be truly serious, I had to hold myself accountable. And I struggle with that at times, especially when it comes to food. But I knew who better to keep you and hold you accountable than complete strangers on the internet. And so it was months after I'd actually started my journey, but I said, let's kick this into overdrive, create this Instagram account, and just be prepared for whatever is going to come your way. And that's how Debt Free Gonna Be started. Just as a page for me to just, hey, listen, I have this debt. Oh, look, I'm making an extra debt payment over here. It's payday and this is what I'm going to do with my money. And yeah, it's been a ride since I started that page.
Wow. I mean, that is one phenomenal to be like, okay, you know what? If I'm going to do this, here we go. Let's let the internet hold me accountable. Now, from your original plan for Debt Free Gonna Be, which started as the Instagram page, from then until now, I mean, how have things changed for you?
Overwhelmingly. I love my community. I love what we've been able to build. It is truly a safe space for people to talk about their debt, learn why they're in debt, right? Really that connection with money, some of the barriers that may be in place that necessitate taking on debt, things like that, without fear of judgment. One of the things I pride myself on is that when I'm sharing information, especially when it comes to student news, because we know that's ever changing, especially over the last few years, is that I break things down in a way that people can digest it. I think a lot of times, whether it's student loans or it's anything else that is presented in a complicated way, the use of these big terms that aren't necessarily necessary, it becomes intimidating. And oftentimes, if something is intimidated, I mean, we're human naturally, we want to avoid those things, right? But I can see the power that we have as people, as consumers, and in the student loan space, especially as borrowers, the power that we have when we know more about the policies that impact our money and our ability to take on and pay off debt. So yeah, it's definitely not the modest page that I thought I created. It's a resource for a lot of people. And I wasn't really expecting that. It's become less about me, not only because I'm out of debt, but it became less about me a long time ago when I realized the more information or the more digging I did into student loans, more people were paying attention to that. And it's not to say that, my journey didn't count. It's just, it became less about me and more about how can I help the people? How can I serve the people in my community?
I love that. And you said one thing that really stood out to me. I mean, you said that you like to present your information in a way that's very easy to understand. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I love most about your Instagram page.
Oh,
And
thank you.
that's really what
Aw.
I've strived to do as well. I
Yeah.
think like finances are they can be so scary, so
Mhm.
intimidating. And we live in a society that is just now getting comfortable with talking about it. But,
Yes.
a lot of us still have those like fears and the shame that surround finances. So I think we can approach it from a place of, okay, what's the simplest thing you need to know to improve? It's just going to do amazing things. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I've talked about my debt-free journey on the podcast, and I actually had two of them, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
because I didn't fix the issue the first time. That's a
Yeah.
whole other story. We won't get into it. But can you share your debt-free journey? How it started, what helped you, what didn't help you, and where you are now that you are debt-free?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's crazy because even saying it out loud or hearing you say you're debt free, it's like, oh, yeah, that's true. Like, that's right. Still feels surreal. So I started my journey in fall of 2018 with what I knew at the time was about $189,000. 75% of that, and if my math is right, that's like 130,000, 130 something thousand in student loans, about 50,000 in credit card debt, and maybe $5,000 roughly left on my car loan. So I start my journey, and a few months after I started, now remember, this was it. This was me being absolutely serious about it. There was no more going back. I knew what it felt like to be broke, to constantly owe people. I was serious this time.
This time.
This time. A few months after starting my journey, I had paid off some smaller credit card debt first, just to help me build up momentum, kind of feel good, give me a nice mental boost. I was actually furloughed. So I work for the federal government and I was
Wow.
furloughed. And that furlough at the time was under the Trump administration. And we weren't really certain how long it was going to last, whether we were going to get paid, things like that. And I thought that for a moment, I was like, is this the universe telling me again, you're not supposed to be debt free? Like, this life that you say that you want isn't going to happen for you. So those 35 days that I was furloughed, I was working full time, but receiving partial pay. Like, I never knew exactly what my paycheck was going to look like, unfortunately. And so that was scary. There's a lot of uncertainty. I didn't know, if I was going to be able to cover all of my bills, because at the time I only had like $1,000 in my emergency fund, because that's advice that's widely given. Like, oh, you just need $1,000 in your emergency fund. Frankly, it's not enough. So the furlough ended and we did receive retroactive pay. And that lit like another fire underneath me, because those 35 days of uncertainty, of someone dictating when I got paid and how much it was going to be, like, it was just too scary for me and I felt out of control. And so actually after that furlough, that's when I started the actual Instagram page for
Wow.
extra accountability. So I had paid off by like summer of 2019, I had paid off about $16,000, which included my car. So it's completely, no more car payments. And I kind of had to have a meeting with myself and say, okay, if you're serious, you're paying off debt, there's something else that you finally have to address. And what this was, I had not filed tax returns for 2 years,
No.
both federal and state, because I knew I owed. And I know I owed because I was under withholding, just for some, I'm using air quotes, extra money on my paycheck. And it wasn't my money. Okay.
Right.
Kind of got caught up. I got comfortable having that money. So I hired a professional to help me square away those tax returns. And when we sent the tax returns off, the debt came up to like $17,000. Well, once penalty and interest was added, the total was $21,946.35. I will never forget that number. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks because I paid off $16,000 and here I am owing more than I just paid off. And this is what put me into $200,000, $211, I believe, $1,000 in debt. And I'm just like, first the furlough, now this. Am I ever going to get rid of this debt? So I did. I persisted. I did not give up despite what I felt like doing. But I had to remind myself, hey, listen, again, you already know what it's like not to pay this debt off. You know what it's like to stay doing the same thing. You're never going to get anywhere. And so I just rolled that tax debt into my debt payoff plan and I kept on tackling it. The miracle, I guess, that happened was COVID in a way. I don't want to say miracle, but
that's one way to look at it.
Right? Because I was able to pause my student loan payments. And my student loan payments at the time were like $800 a month. I mean, pre-COVID, my loans were accruing $25 in interest per day, Rhea, per day. So when I made my payment, when I made my monthly payment, I was making interest payments only. Like my principal wasn't moving. So during this payment pause, I just tackled the rest of my credit card debt and the tax debt. So in 2021, I ended the year completely out of credit card debt. And then the PSLF waiver, Public Service Loan Forgiveness waiver, was announced in October of 2021. And when I realized what that meant, like I read the fact sheet that the Department of Education and the White House put out for the waiver many times over to make sure I understood what was going on. And I realized my loans could be forgiven sooner than I think, because I was enrolled in public service loan forgiveness, but because of the approval rating for it, it was like 1% to 2%. There were people who qualified for forgiveness and just were denied. So I couldn't really kind of rest my laurels or have confidence in the fact that the government was actually going to help me out like they were supposed to in this program, after I had dedicated time in public service. So the waiver came and I realized, oh, this is your ticket. You don't have to now start tackling your student loans because that's all that was left. I cleared the tax debt. I paid off all my credit card debt and all that was left was $135,000 in student loans. Well, by the end of last year, all my loans were forgiven. I think I logged into Mohella, which was my loan servicer at the time. I logged into that account first and started seeing some funny things happening where like my principal balance was zero, but it still showed I had like $1,700 in outstanding interest. And I said, okay, I'll let them do their thing. Let me look back the next day. So I checked the next day and the account said zero across the board.
Wow.
And it took a couple more days after that. And then when I logged into my dashboard at studentaid.gov, which is the Department of Education's kind of Rolodex or database for federal student loans or federal aid, I'll say, it was $0. So I was able to end 2022 completely debt free. But it's still like I cried. It was very emotional, but I still there was a piece of me that still didn't want to let go yet because I needed proof. Like it's one thing to log in and not see an account balance or a payment due. It's another thing when you receive a letter that says that your obligation has been satisfied and congratulations for completing public service loan forgiveness.
Wow.
And so I didn't get that letter until January, I think like the second week of January. So yes, that's my debt payoff journey. I tackled about nearly $80,000 in consumer debt. And then my loans were forgiven, a total of $133,375, I believe.
Holy moly. I mean, I got chills listening to that. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a firm believer in like the power of manifestation and
Yeah.
like do right and right comes. And I
Yeah.
feel like you're living proof of that, right? Like you put the stake in the ground and you're like, I'm going to get rid of this debt.
Yeah.
Like it's happening. You
Yeah.
weren't even thinking about, okay, how are these student loans going to disappear? No, you were like, okay, I'm going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you did what you were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And your student loans were forgiven.
They were
Holy
forgiven.
cow.
It's amazing, Rhea, because someone said I was lucky that I lucked up. And that didn't sit well with me. And I'm about to get emotional just thinking about it because carrying six-figure debt for your adult life, I didn't take out six figures of student loan debt. That's what interest did. That interest just kept piling on and piling on and piling on. And it was rough. I've talked about it on my blog. I've been depressed because of my debt. I have almost lost a job because of debt, because it just didn't seem like no matter what I did, I wasn't going to get anywhere. This is where I was going to be. And I literally felt like I was suffocating. So lucky isn't how I would describe that.
No.
I do recognize that I was prepared, right? Because there's a quote that says like success happens when opportunity and preparation meet. The opportunity was the waiver. I prepared, I read, I made sure I understood. I did what I needed to do in order for that to happen for me. And so that's how I would characterize it, really. It's just that I was prepared and I knew I wanted them gone. Now, if the waiver was never announced in 2021, after I paid off my credit card debt, the next debt would be my student loans. I had already broken them down. It was 9 of them total. I had already broken them down from lowest balance to highest balance because I knew 6 figures of student loan debt is a monster. So I knew I wanted to tackle the smaller loans first just to give me, just to give me that momentum. But yeah, it happened. Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. And
Thank
I
you.
would 100% agree that doesn't sound like luck to me. It sounds like you put in the work. And like you said, opportunity met preparation.
Yep.
And here you are on the other side. So, really quick, I just want to kind of hear from you when you were like aggressively tackling your credit cards and your car loan, what did life look like for you? I mean, you're a foodie, I see. So like,
Yeah.
what was life like? What was your budget like?
So I'll tell you, it was not what other people say it should be. I definitely continued to do the things I enjoyed doing. I just modified them. So
Yes.
I didn't go out and accept every single happy hour or dinner invitation. I even had a group of friends who were so rooting for me and so wanted me to succeed on this journey that they would say, hey, come over to my house. I'm cooking dinner. Just bring a bottle of wine. Okay, cool. And so I would still spend time with my friends. It would just be with boundaries because there weren't boundaries before. It's like, hey, do you want to go to dinner? Like I never would look into my bank account. I would take out the credit card and swipe it, then of course we'd order drinks and that definitely increases the bill. And so I knew because originally when I started the journey, I tried to eliminate that stuff. I tried to eliminate the fun, the eating out, the vacations. I'm a huge baseball fan. I can't imagine my life without going to the ballpark. What? And I think before I got serious, I think that's part of the other reason why I really didn't get anywhere. I would pay off debt, don't get me wrong, but I would also rack it up in another place because I just felt so restricted. And so while tackling my car, my credit cards, and the tax debt, my budget had a line item. I used to call it blow. Because it's blow money, like just money that you could just do whatever you want to do with it. But I had a line item in my budget for fun money. And I did whatever I needed. I felt like I wanted to do it. And it wasn't a lot. It might have been maybe $100 when I got paid, which, some people may think is a lot of money, but it was what I budgeted for and it worked for me. And I was able to make that $100 last. I'd go get a $10 ticket at the ballpark, or we'd go to happy hour, but say, okay, it's a 1 drink or 2 drink max, or whatever, or maybe we'll eat before we leave the house. So I found ways to make my budget work for me on this journey so that I could still like stick to it. If something isn't fun, again, going back to the fact that we're human, if something isn't fun for us, we're not going to do it. Right. So I was able to not feel like I was restricting myself, and I was still able to live despite the fact that I was actually tackling debt. And I was actually tackling debt and saving money at the same time, because it didn't feel like I had the luxury of doing one or the other. Like,
Yeah.
right. Because I knew if I didn't have more than $1,000 in my emergency fund and something happened, I was going to probably take on more debt anyway. So I tried to prioritize amongst my necessary expenses. I tried to prioritize an extra debt payment, as well as putting, even if it was just $50 or $100, like consistently saving in my emergency fund.
Can I just say, I understand that everybody's debt-free journey is different, but
Absolutely.
I 100% agree with you that the key to successful long-term budgeting is including the things you love in moderation, right?
Mm-hmm,
Like we
mm-hmm.
all have to find that balance, but depriving yourself, like you said, like you are just going to undo all the damage you did and be right back where you started, if not in a worse position.
Exactly. I equate it to trigger warning for anyone who struggles with food. I equate it to that. I've done yo-yo dieting. I've done the restrictive, no carbs, you can only eat this, and I end up blowing it. I'm fine for a certain period of time, and then I binge. And the same is with your spending, the same is with your money. So yeah, it definitely has to be for anyone, whether you're tackling debt or not, because millionaires are on budgets. Don't think that they're not. They might call it something different. It's a spending plan. They know where their money is going.
Yes.
Trust
I
me.
mean, people can't see me shaking my head, but everybody knows that I am shaking my head, because it is 100% true. You absolutely need a budget, and it is okay if your budget includes the things you love in moderation.
Absolutely.
And I love that. Like, you are a living example of, hey, you can still enjoy your life in moderation and hit these major goals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love that. Got a money question you want me to answer on the podcast? I'm starting a new segment on the show called City Girl Solutions, where I answer any questions you have for me. Money, business, life, you name it. Submit your questions at citygirlsavings.com/QA and get your question answered by me in a future episode. And did you know that we have so many free money resources on our blog, Instagram, and TikTok channels? Find us across the internet at City Girl Savings. Okay, so I mentioned that you were an incredible resource for all things student loans, and I stand by that. But
yeah,
I'm curious to hear, like, what is your advice for someone who is anxiously awaiting this payment pause to end? I mean, it's been pushed out and pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come to an end at some point in time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like, people are stirring, their brains are going. So what advice do you have for someone who's just waiting for it?
Don't wait.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. We should be using this time to plan for when payments resume. Now, there's a couple different scenarios here. If you have been setting aside your monthly payment during this time that payments have been paused, I would recommend that before interest resumes again, to make a lump sum payment. Okay. If you have been utilizing this time to tackle other debt, maybe you have some high interest credit cards that you've been tackling, or you've just been otherwise getting rid of other debt during the payment pause, that's great. But start planning for payments to resume. If you have just been simply living because your student loans had you struggling, suffocating, making it hard to make ends meet, and now you just have been using that money to live, honestly. You're not spending frivolously. You're literally using that money to live, to pay for your housing and your gas and groceries, because everything's high, at this point in time. Prepare for loans to resume. Now, what I mean by that is, if you don't think you're going to be able to afford, like literally not afford your loans or loan payment, I recommend contacting your servicer, figuring out the best repayment plan for you. For some people, they'll be able to go on a $0 a month payment plan, and that's fine. but we can't just wait for it to happen and then not have a plan in place for when those payments come due, because they will come due. If you are able to make your payments or will be able to make your payments when the payment pause ends, start setting aside, and let's say you weren't setting aside the money, start setting aside like trial payments, right? Just to make sure your budget adjusts for the fact that you'll be making those payments again, because lifestyle creep, and I know you've talked about this before, lifestyle creep is real. We get used to having, it's what happened to me when I was under withholding and getting extra money on my paycheck. I got used to that and I started to live off of that, mainly because I wasn't budgeting either. So I couldn't even tell you what I did with that money. But we tend to adjust based on, we have this extra money and we're not paying attention to where it's going. Or maybe the grocery list, the grocery bill has increased more than it should, taking inflation into account, of course, and the price of eggs. But, perhaps we're spending more, we're going more frequently than we were before. Like those are things that signify lifestyle creep. So we want to start adjusting the budget for our student loan payment so that when it's time to make the payment, we don't have any issues one way or the other, whether we can afford to make the payment or not. We know what we're going to do when that time comes.
I think that's fantastic advice. So piggybacking off of that, let's say someone knows that they cannot afford their monthly payment. They know it. So your recommendation is contact the servicers now and figure something
and just
out.
Figure something out. They'll be able to tell you what your options are. You can also go onto studentaid.gov to learn what your options are. And it's very much similar to the same thing you should do for any bill. Like any bill you're going to be late on, any bill you're coming up short on, be proactive and contact your servicer and they'll be able to help you.
Now, what if somebody fears that if they contact them before the pause ends, the servicer is going to require them to start paying? Is that something they should be worried about?
No, that's nothing you should be worried about, literally because of the HEROES Act, which is how the payment pause has been extended, I believe, 8 different times now. That gives you your coverage, your student loan servicer, with the exception of if you have private loans,
okay,
non-Department of Education held loans, you will not be required to make a payment before the payments resume. Now, again, if you're in the situation where you're able to make payments and you want to make that lump sum payment or start making payments before the payment pause ends, there's no penalty for that either.
Okay. And I love this idea of trial payments, right? Yes. Like just start prepping your budget, getting yourself used to making those payments because they will come.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. You shared that your student loans were forgiven. Amazing. Can you maybe share just some things that someone else who is trying to go through that process needs to know, or any things that you maybe picked up as you went through that process that you can share with others? How was that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is a lot better right now than what it had been, as I previously mentioned. So if you were like me and you have been on the fence, or you have been just hesitant, like, I don't know if I'm going to stay in public service, or, oh my goodness, I've only been in public service for 5 years. That's 5 more years of payments. You never know what's going to happen, because according to my public service loan forgiveness paperwork, PSLF paperwork, before the waiver, I still had like 6 years left to work in public service to make payments. And that waiver, because it gave the retroactive credit for time in service as well as periods of forbearance and deferment, I got there much quicker. So if you are hesitant, take this opportunity to determine if your employer is eligible. Again, you have to be working for a nonprofit or not-for-profit organization, which gets confusing because I know a lot of people who are in healthcare, and healthcare is technically public service, but they may be working for a private institution or a for-profit institution, and therefore wouldn't qualify for public service loan forgiveness. But the studentaid.gov has a employer search eligibility tool. It's new. It's kind of fancy to help you determine whether or not your employer qualifies, and use the PSLF help tool that's also there to help you determine whether you're eligible and to complete and submit your form. You don't lose anything but the time it takes to complete the form and to get the signature to certify your employment. That's it. The other thing I want people to make sure they do, because even though I knew this, I still made this mistake. When I submitted my form, there was a digital signature on the form. They only accept signatures that are hand drawn or like wet signatures, as opposed to like a digital certificate where you just type a code and it like signs it for you. Nah, that's not going to do. So they actually, they rejected my first form that I submitted once the waiver was announced. They were like, yeah, no, you need to, like, you got to submit this with wet signatures. So just keep that in mind, because right now the processing, it's taking at least 90 business days for them to process your paperwork. So what you don't want to do is have any other delays introduced into this. And again, you can apply to the program and you may not yet reach forgiveness. That's okay. Have this working in the background for you, because you never know where you're going to be. I actually thought I was going to leave public service. I thought I was, and I didn't think PSLF was going to happen for me. And I was still there because I was a little comfortable. I was still there. And now my loans are gone. So just make sure you do it. Get wet signatures or hand-drawn signatures. Like they can even hand draw it like with the mouse or something, but it just has to be a signature. It can't be text. You can't just type your name to sign it. It can't be those things. And then make sure you're doing that every year. So with public service loan forgiveness, it's your employer that qualifies you for the program. And in order for you to remain in the program, so to speak, you have to certify your employment every year, or at least you would want to. So that way you can get the payment count updates, see where you are in relationship to the required qualifying payments for PSLF, which is 120 payments, so that you can see how close you are or how not close you are, and you can make a decision there. But again, you don't lose anything by applying to the program. You don't lose anything if you apply and say, hey, I think I should receive forgiveness now, and it's not true. Nothing's going to happen to you. Just fill out the paperwork, because you just never know.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's like, don't take yourself out of the running by yourself, right? Like let them let you know that you're out of the running, or that right now it's not it. Don't make that decision yourself.
No. And unfortunately, a lot of people did for the waiver. I'm finally starting to get messages like, I think I missed the waiver and I think I should have applied. Yeah. But the program is still there. And there are some changes. Some of the relaxed rules that we saw with the public service loan forgiveness waiver are actually coming. It's going to become codified or become law in July. So it's going to be another opportunity, not exactly like the waiver, but it'll be another opportunity for people who are pursuing public service loan forgiveness to get closer to that forgiveness.
Great information. Oh, amazing information. Another question I have for you: if someone has had their student loans forgiven, or they got the letter and they will, is there anything that they should keep in mind? Like, are there like maybe tax implications or things that someone wouldn't necessarily think about that they should be aware of?
Yeah, I've got two things. And you mentioned one, taxes. Now, public service loan forgiveness is not taxed at the federal level. Most states don't tax public service loan forgiveness, but you would have to check with your state, individual state. I don't know offhand. I just know at the federal level, there's no taxes.
Okay.
The other thing is, expect to see a change in your credit report now, or your credit score is a better way to say it, because student loans are installment accounts. And so we know what happens when you pay off an installment account, like your mortgage or your car. They don't fall off of your credit report, but they're no longer active. And because those are no longer active accounts, I mean, there's nothing really to report. You've paid it off. There's nothing left. It's not revolving like a credit card. You're probably going to see some type of change in your credit score. Everybody's credit profile is different. So it could increase or it could decrease your score. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Just be happy you got out of that student loan debt. Things will work themselves out. And the only reason why it happens is because the closing of that account adjusts your credit history. It adjusts your, I'm going to get ready to say your available credit, but that's not exactly what that is because you don't really have available credit for an installment account. But it's going to impact several factors that make up the credit score. And that's why you're going to see that adjustment.
Okay, that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I think to your point, like your credit score will rebound if it goes down because of this, but at least like, hey, the debt is gone. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So again, I got that paid in full letter in January. Nothing has happened to my credit score yet. It's still reporting as if I had those loans. So once it hits, I don't know what's going to happen. Once it says zero balance, I don't care either because
that's the least of your
that
concern.
score will be okay.
All right. You'll be just fine.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But I also understand that there are people who are looking to buy a house, you know, when their student loans are gone or can't buy a house because of student loan debt. And so, you know, obviously your score is important for those things, but just keep in mind, you know, if you're in that space where you're looking for a house and you're waiting for your loans to fall off your credit or, you know, to be paid in full on your credit report, then there might be some adjustments that you'll either have to explain or just give some time to work out.
That's great information for people to keep in mind. Another question I have for you, I mean, obviously student loans are a hot topic right now, but you know, debt comes in all shapes and sizes,
Sure does.
many forms.
Sure does.
In your opinion, what types of debt should be paid off first? So if somebody has $50 extra a month to send to debt and they can make the minimum payments on everything else, what would you suggest they send that money to?
Listen, as someone who had to deal with $20,000 in tax debt, pay Uncle Sam, pay the IRS, pay the tax people first. But if you don't have that, because you are not me and you're smarter than me, because you didn't land in $20,000+ in tax debt, definitely your high interest rate debt first.
Okay.
But again, focus on one debt at a time. Throw what you can at that one debt and pay the minimum on everything else. And the reason why, you know that there are two common debt payoff strategies, right? You snowball, you use smallest balance first, and then avalanche, you know, the debt with the highest interest rate first. I am a fan of both of them and I have utilized both of them, but knowing what I know now about interest and how it just really eats up life, like interest is so bad, especially when it comes to student loans. Tackle the higher interest rate first. It's going to save you the money, save you more money in the long run. The goal should be to hold on to as much of your money as possible. And so you want to be able to put more money back in your pocket. So I recommend tackling your high interest rate debt first.
Okay. Now, a question for you. If somebody does have tax debt, I mean, I know that the IRS will allow payment plans, but are you still like, should someone set the payment plan up, but then if they can pay more, pay more?
I would pay more. You don't have to. But see, in my situation, it was a little different. It wasn't the IRS that was giving me grief. It was the state. The state was threatening to put a flag on my account so that when it was time to renew my tags or renew my license, there was an issue. They were threatening additional enforcement if I didn't pay. And so I was kind of in this, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And I ended up doing like a balance transfer with like convenience checks just to like get them off of my back and give me some more breathing room. If you're not in that situation, then just stick to your payment plan because the payment plan should have built in the interest that they're going to be charging you anyway. And so, yeah, if you can manage a payment plan, especially like with the IRS, and you still have a little bit left over, you can definitely tackle another debt. But again, I try to tell people to tackle one debt at a time because you'll really see more progress that way. Multitasking doesn't work. We try to do it all the time, and we're not giving the quality and evenly divided attention that we think we are. So if you want to narrow in on your tax debt, narrow in on your tax debt. But I don't think the tax debt is going to have as high an interest as like credit card debt, which will be constantly accruing because you're rolling over the balance each month.
I would definitely agree. And I definitely think that, you know, if you do have extra amounts of money to spend, you're going to see so much more progress putting all of that extra to one debt at a time, as opposed to like, okay, an extra 25 here, extra 30 on this one. Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. And I used to do that. I
Yeah.
used to do that. I used to think I was doing something because I would pay like a few dollars more. It's like, oh, the minimum payment is only $25. Let me send 25 more. And it's like, yeah, but your balance is like thousands of dollars. What are you doing?
Right.
You're not going to get
Right.
anywhere. But again, I also understand, the key is to do the best with what you have where you are.
Right.
You're not comparing your journey to anybody else's. Ray has already said everybody's journey is going to look different. Go at your own pace.
100%. Okay, you touched on this a little bit. I really want to hear your thoughts on this because it's a question I get asked all the time. Should someone save or pay off debt? One or the other. I feel like I already know your answer, but I
You
want to hear
already
you
know
say
my
it.
answer because I think you saw the reel I did asking the same question. There
Yes.
isn't, I can't answer. I can't
Yeah.
answer one. Like, if you can, do both. Like, that's
Yeah.
literally what I said in the reel, too. If you can, do both. But I mentioned before, I understand that everyone does not have that flexibility. Some have to choose which one they are going to do first. If you do not have emergency savings set off to the side, you need to save, because without saving, you tackle this debt, life is going to life.
Oof.
There's something that's going to come up. And without emergency savings to buffer you, you're turning to debt, which means you're digging your hole just a little more deeper. And it's going to be harder for you to get out because you're now in that cycle of something comes up, more debt, something comes up, more debt. Having emergency savings at least 1 month. And I know, everyone has different opinions about what that should be. At least a month of your expenses, trust me, can just help you navigate a storm when it comes, because it will.
Yeah, yeah, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Life will life, as you
Yep. And
say.
life will life. So if you can, save and pay off debt. If you can't, save first.
Okay. I 100% agree. I
Thank
think,
you.
hey, if you don't have a savings and everything's going to debt, yeah, you may feel good until life and you're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I have to use this credit card I just paid
Yep.
off.
Exactly.
Avoid that. Avoid that trap.
Yep.
So, how do you think mindset plays a role in the financial freedom journey? Like whether that's saving, paying off debt, working towards financial stability, like what role do you believe mindset plays in that?
A very big one, because I truly believe that if you think you can't, you're not going to. If you
Oof,
think you
yes.
can, you can. And there's a quote, it's a quote from someone, but it's true. It's because, what you believe, what you say to yourself, you become those things. And I know we talked about how debt free gonna be was created, but I chose that name. Again, originally it was about me. I chose that name because I saw a lot of people wanting to be debt free, like debt free wannabes. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not a wannabe. I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be debt free. And so it became a declaration. And I truly believe that when you believe in yourself, even when life's, because think about all the things I shared that I went through, even on this journey, especially in the beginning of the journey, that could have just stopped me. When you have the determination, when you have meditated on whatever that looks like for you, why you want to do these things. Like, I wanted the options. I wanted to be able to help family. I wanted to be able to travel and give without having to worry about the bill, right? I was committed to that. And I set my mind and I thought about it all the time, to the point where I could almost see it and taste what it looked like.
Yes.
And so I believe that mindset it's the main driver in any financial journey. If you don't believe you're going to do it, you're not.
I could not agree more. And there is this abundance meditation I like to listen to by Bob Proctor. And he says,
Ooh,
if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And it's
wow.
so true.
Yeah,
It's
it
so true.
is.
If you can envision it for yourself, like you can make it a reality. But if you don't
Yeah,
even, if you can't see it for yourself, it's not going to happen. Like your
right.
brain, like, will just say, no, that's not going to happen and like
Absolutely.
rule it out for you.
It will. And in addition to that, your body will start moving in that direction too,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I am a firm believer in the importance of mindset, like
Yeah.
not just in your financial journey, but like in
And
anything that you're
anything.
pursuing in life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Any last piece of advice for those who just feel like they are drowning in debt and like don't know what to do next?
Yes. One, time ain't waiting for you. So
Oof.
start, because we spend a lot of time waiting for things to be perfect. Oh, I'll start on Monday. Because I say that a lot when it comes to eating right. That's only like I literally just equate all of this, like with finances, with food, because something, the food is something I won't say I struggle with it. I just like it. And I don't have the boundaries I probably should have with it.
Same.
Anyway,
Same.
so start. I don't care if you don't have all the answers. I don't care if it's Tuesday at 9 p.m. Just start. There are tons of resources out there. You have resources for people to start tackling their debt. I have resources out there for people to start tackling their debt. The other thing I think that it's important to do is, yes, have an idea of how much debt you owe in total, but don't ruminate on it because it'll be overwhelming. Break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks. There's a saying, I think this whole podcast has been nothing but, there's a saying, there's a saying, but they've helped. So there's a saying about like the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I had 6 figures. I had an entire mountain of debt. If I looked at that every single day, which I had before I started my journey, which is, my mental health was struggling and things like that. When you look at it in totality, it's overwhelming and it'll absolutely feel like you'll never get through it. But if you break it down into smaller chunks, smaller goals, say, okay, take a month goal if you want and say, okay, this month I'm going to pay an extra $500, work your budget, pick up something to help you earn extra money, sell some stuff in your house. There are lots of ways to make extra money and make that goal. And then the next month, set another one and keep going until that debt's paid off. It's more manageable and you'll feel good and you'll be able to actually see progress if you just focus on the smaller goal and then reward yourself along the way. And I'm not saying break out the fanciest bottle of champagne and live it up. What I'm saying is take a moment and acknowledge how far you've come and the accomplishment, big or small. And I say this a lot. And I think people, especially when you're talking about social media, people tend to focus on how much debt people are able to pay off in a short amount of time, or that, oh my goodness, they were able to pay $2,000 to their debt, this payday. Those are great, right? And those are those people. They're not you. But what about the other changes that take place when you're on a financial journey? Let's say you're starting and you were behind on all your bills and now you're not. That's a win. Let's say you're able to stick to your budget consistently for like 2 consecutive months. That's a win. So it's not just about the tackling debt. It's the growth and the healthy habits that you learn to implement and that become a part of your money routine or your routine in general that are also the wins.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. And you can't disregard that. Otherwise, you'll be like me and end up back in debt, right? Like if you don't learn along the way, appreciate the journey and really implement things that are lifelong for you, it's going to be a consistent loop.
Absolutely. Do those things. Start. You got to start before you're prepared. Start before you're ready. I think I'm adding this in, but definitely have a why, like have the reason why you want to do this. Go at your own pace, budget for fun, celebrate your wins, and create small goals.
Fantastic advice. Fantastic. And everyone can do it.
Everyone can
literally start now.
Yep, absolutely. And it's going to look different, but that's okay.
That's okay. Nika, this was such an impactful discussion. I appreciate your insight and your openness and your willingness to share. It's been such a pleasure. How and where can listeners connect with you? Because I have no doubt they will want to.
I am in the Instagram streets. So yes, I have a blog, but I don't update. I haven't been writing, but you can find me in the latest student loan news, tips to help pay off debt. I also do a lot of sharing of my personal day-to-day and life in my Instagram stories. So you can catch me on Instagram at debtfreegonnab.
and I will make sure to link to it in the show notes. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you so much for tuning into City Girl Savings today. I hope you feel empowered and inspired to master your money as you make your way to your dream life. Make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when a new episode comes out. I truly value your thoughts and feedback, so please leave a review and let me know how this podcast has impacted you. Can't wait to chat soon and make it a great day.